When Valerie Daniels, a retired U.S. Army sergeant, hung an American flag on her front porch in Highwood Acres, she never imagined it would ignite a firestorm with her Homeowners Association, HOA. For her, that flag wasn't just a piece of cloth. It was a symbol of the freedoms she'd fought for overseas, a quiet tribute to her years of service. But the HOA saw it differently. 3 days after she mounted it on a simple wooden bracket, a letter arrived sternly declaring her flag an unauthorized decoration that violated their strict community guidelines. They demanded she remove it or face a $150 fine, citing rules against excessive or unapproved external displays. To Valerie, calling the Stars and Stripes excessive felt like a slap in the face, an insult not just to her, but to every American who cherishes personal liberty. She marched to the HOA office, her service badge pinned proudly to her shirt, expecting reason to prevail. Instead, she met Clarissa, the sharp-eyed secretary who defended the rule with cold logic. We need consistency. If you fly a flag, someone else might put up something controversial. Valerie stood firm, arguing that the American flag deserved an exception, especially for a veteran. Yet the HOA doubled down, piling on fines that climbed to $450, revealing a stark clash between individual rights and bureaucratic control. This wasn't just about a flag anymore. It was about a system that prized uniformity over freedom, a petty tyranny lurking in a manicured cul-de-sac. Valerie's fight exposed the tension many Americans feel, the right to express who you are versus the suffocating grip of rules meant to keep everything and everyone in line. Her porch became a battleground, proving personal freedom isn't handed over easily. For Valerie Daniels, a retired U.S. Army sergeant, the American flag she hung on her porch wasn't just a decoration. It was a lifeline to her past, a weathered emblem of the patriotism and pride that defined her years in uniform. She'd carried that flag through the dust and danger of a forward operating base overseas, where its red, white, and blue stripes offered a flicker of home amid the chaos of war. It hung there as a silent witness to the friends she'd lost, the sleepless nights she'd endured, and the oath she'd taken to defend the freedoms it represented. When she settled into Highwood Acres, a tidy suburban neighborhood with lawns trimmed to perfection, she pulled it from an old trunk and mounted it beside her front door, a final touch to make her house feel truly hers. To Valerie, that flag was more than fabric. It was a badge of honor, a testament to her service and the legacy of her father and grandfather, both veterans before her. So when the Highwood Acres HOA slapped her with a $150 fine, calling it an unauthorized decoration, something inside her snapped. This wasn't just a petty dispute over rules. It was an attack on the very identity she'd risked her life for. She faced down Clarissa, the HOA secretary, and later the board, arguing that the flag deserved respect, not penalties, especially for someone who'd worn the uniform. Each fine escalating to $300, then $450, felt like a personal betrayal, a rejection of the sacrifices she'd made for the country she loved. Yet every time she glimpsed that flag fluttering in the breeze, her resolve deepened. It fueled her to fight back, first with an appeal citing her veteran status, then through the media, and finally with the governor's help. For Valerie, this battle was about more than her porch. It was about defending the pride of every veteran, the right to stand tall and say, "I served, and this flag is my story." Her patriotism wasn't negotiable, and neither was her dignity. Valerie Daniels, a retired U.S. Army sergeant, wasn't the type to back down from a fight. Not in combat zones overseas, and certainly not on her own front porch in Highwood Acres. When the HOA fined her $150 for flying an American flag, calling it an unauthorized decoration, she saw it for what it was: unjust authority flexing its muscle over something sacred. Her military training had taught her a simple truth: follow orders when they're fair, but challenge them when they're wrong. So she didn't just remove the flag and pay up. Instead, she pinned her service badge to her shirt, marched to the HOA office, and confronted Clarissa, the secretary, with a practiced smile in a rule book thicker than her compassion. There must be an exception for the American flag, Valerie insisted, but Clarissa's response: rules are rules, only stoked her fire. The fines piled up, hitting $300, then $450, each one a jab at her principles. She filed an appeal, armed with federal laws and her veteran status, only to face a stonewalling board led by Robert Carter, a real estate man more obsessed with property values than people. At the hearing, they gave her 3 minutes to plead her case before dismissing her with a unanimous vote, smugly ordering the flag down by week's end. Most would have quit, but not Valerie. That night, pacing her living room, she decided to escalate, calling the local news to shine a light on the HOA's absurdity. Her voice trembled with conviction as she told Angela, the reporter, "This is about what's right." The story went viral, drawing support from neighbors like Lucas, a retired cop, and veterans waving flags in solidarity. Even when the HOA retaliated with petty citations about her shed and lawn, she pushed harder, catching the governor's ear. Valerie's resistance wasn't loud or reckless. It was steady, rooted in the discipline of a soldier who'd faced worse odds. She turned a $150 fine into a reckoning, proving that unjust authority crumbles when you refuse to bend. For her, taking down that flag was never an option. It was a line she wouldn't cross. Valerie Daniels started her fight alone, a retired U.S. Army sergeant staring down a $150 fine from the Highwood Acres HOA for flying her American flag. She thought she'd be a solitary voice against their rigid rules, but she underestimated the power of community. At first, it was just whispers, curious glances from neighbors as she defied the HOA's demands. Then came Lucas, a retired police officer and Army Reserve veteran who lived 2 doors down. One afternoon, as she checked her mail, he approached with a quiet strength. "I support what you're doing, Valerie. It's outrageous they're fining you." His words were a lifeline, a crack in the silence that had gripped the neighborhood. Word spread, and when her appeal was denied at a packed HOA hearing, fines climbing to $300, then $450. More voices joined her. She took her story to the local news, and Angela, the reporter, aired it with a camera crew in her living room. Overnight, the footage exploded online, igniting a firestorm of public support. Strangers sent letters, some fiery with outrage. How dare they punish a veteran? Others tender with gratitude, thanking her for her service and her stand. A local veterans group rallied outside Highwood Acres, their pickup truck roaring down the street, American flags waving from the bed as they honked in solidarity. Neighbors who'd once avoided her gaze now nodded in approval, some even clapping as she walked by after the HOA backed down. The governor's office called, promising action, and suddenly Valerie's porch became a symbol for something bigger. It wasn't just her fight anymore, it was theirs. Lucas stood by her at the next board meeting, and an older resident, Mr. Burton, brought her a blueberry pie with trembling hands, saying, "I've lived in a fear of the HOA for years, but not anymore." That collective swell, neighbors, veterans, viewers, and even state leaders, turned a personal battle into a triumph. Valerie learned what many Americans know deep down. When a community rallies behind a just cause, it's unstoppable. Her flag still flies, not just for her, but for everyone it inspired to stand together. Valerie Daniels had fought the Highwood Acres HOA tooth and nail over a $150 fine that ballooned to $450 for flying her American flag. But the tide truly turned when the government stepped in. A retired U.S. Army sergeant, she'd exhausted her appeals, faced down a dismissive board led by Robert Carter, and taken her story to the media, sparking a viral wave of support. Yet the HOA clung to their rules, piling on petty citations about her shed and lawn height in a desperate bid to break her. Then late one evening, after a call with an attorney, a voicemail blinked on her phone. It was Christina Marshall, a senior assistant from the governor's office, saying Governor Markham had caught wind of her plight and wanted to talk. Valerie's jaw dropped. Was this real? She verified the number, returned the call, and soon found herself walking into the state capitol, her service ribbon pinned to a navy dress, nerves buzzing like a soldier before a briefing. The governor, a tall man with graying temples, rose from his mahogany desk with a handshake and a firm, "It's an honor to meet you, Miss Daniels. Thank you for your service." He didn't mince words. "It's appalling of veterans being fined for flying our flag, frankly, that any American is. He pledged to explore a state law to stop HOAs from bullying residents, and in the meantime, sent an official letter to Highwood Acres outlining his stance. That letter landed like a thunderbolt. Neighbors whispered that Carter went pale reading it. The governor's intervention wasn't just talk, it was a lifeline, amplifying Valerie's fight with political weight she couldn't wield alone. Within days, the HOA caved, dropping all fines and allowing her flag to stay, promising a rule review. The governor's proposed bill gained traction, hinting at broader change. For Valerie, this was vindication, a reminder that when local powers overstep, higher authority can step in to right the scales. Her porch flag became a beacon, not just of her resolve, but of a system that, at its best, protects the freedoms she'd sworn to defend. Government intervention turned her solo stand into a victory for all. Valerie Daniels' battle over a $150 fine for flying her American flag didn't end with just keeping it on her porch. It reshaped Highwood Acres and left a legacy of triumph and lasting change. A retired U.S. Army sergeant, she'd faced the HOA's escalating penalties, $300, then $450, and their stubborn refusal to budge, even after her appeals and media spotlight. But when the governor intervened, sending a letter that turned Robert Carter's face ghostly white, the tide shifted. 2 weeks later, an envelope arrived. Not another fine, but a surrender. Carter's letter, stamped with a HOA seal, voided all penalties, allowed her flag to stay, and promised a community-wide rule review. For Valerie, rereading it 3 times to believe it, the relief was overwhelming, but the victory ran deeper than her porch. At the next board meeting, she stood before Carter and Clarissa, who wouldn't meet her eyes, and thanked them for relenting, while urging accountability so no resident would face such harassment again. Neighbors murmured agreement, and outside a small crowd clapped, tears welling in her eyes as she felt truly home for the first time. The change rippled outward. Carter resigned, citing health reasons, though whispers pointed to legal heat and bad press. Clarissa followed, leaving the HOA to rebuild. Lucas, her neighbor and a retired cop, launched a monthly barbecue in the clubhouse lot, a tradition born from newfound unity. Mr. Burton, an elderly resident, handed her a blueberry pie, his voice trembling. "I've lived in fear of the HOA for years, but not anymore." Valerie's fight woke Highwood Acres from its paranoid slumber. Neighbors once silenced by rules about flower colors or mailbox brands now shared laughter and recipes, fear evaporating like morning dew. The governor's bill to protect flag displays gained steam, and Valerie spoke on a veterans' rights panel, her story a spark for others. Her triumph wasn't just keeping the flag, it was proving one voice could dismantle a bully regime and sow seeds of community. Every morning as that flag flutters, it stands for more than her service. It's a symbol of a neighborhood reborn, united by a woman who refused to back down. Valerie Daniels' fight to keep her American flag flying teaches us lessons that hit home as we age. Stand up for what matters, lean on your community, and know that change is possible, even later in life. For seniors, her story reminds us that our voices, seasoned by decades of experience, carry weight. When the HOA fined her, Valerie, a retired Army sergeant, didn't bow to their rules. She fought for her right to honor her service, proving that principles don't fade with time. Her courage shows us we can challenge unfairness, whether it's a neighbor's overreach or a rule that stifles our spirit, by speaking out with conviction. She also found strength in others, from Lucas's quiet support to the governor's intervention, a lesson that asking for help isn't weakness, but wisdom. Most powerfully, her triumph transformed Highwood Acres, turning fear into friendship with barbecues and shared pies. For us, it's a nudge. Don't just accept the status quo, plant seeds for better days. At 50, 60, or beyond, we're not done making a difference. One stand like Valerie's can ripple through a lifetime, leaving a legacy of hope.